Tomorrow's celebrations, which is the International Women's Day celebrations. This will be in Kololo for our own context here in Uganda, and UBC TV will be live in Kololo, of course, to bring you that coverage live. But before we get into the events of tomorrow, today, just right here, we get into talk about investing in forests and protected areas, and of course, we'll have a couple of visitors and guests in studios. But I will start the conversation with Mr. Bob Kazungu, the Principal Forest Officer from the Ministry of Water and Environment. You're welcome, Mr. Kazungu.
Thank you very much, moderator, and good morning, viewers.
Well, I'm very happy to have you here, and thank you so much for joining me.
A pleasure.
We talk about investing in forests and protected areas. Let's talk about protected areas first and foremost for people to understand and to know what we are talking about.
Thank you very much. Protected areas in Uganda are many, but they include what are called central forest reserves. These forests that we put aside for some special conservation purposes, and they are managed currently by the National Forestry Authority. In total, there are 506 of them. And we also have the national parks. And we have wildlife reserves. So those are what we call protected areas in terms of, in the context of this project.
Okay, we talk about investing in them, and I am sure that there is some funding that is supposed to help us to this. Let's talk about that. First of all, what are we talking about when you talk about investing in these forests and protected areas?
Investing in these forests and protected areas is an issue of putting in money, expecting to get out some money. And so we've been talking about conservation for a very long time and protecting our natural resources, especially forests, for a very long time. But now we think that it's good enough to rather invest in them so that we can have a benefit out of them that is easy for us to see, because the ecological benefits sometimes may not be very easy to see with the people's eyes. But if we have a monetary value out of something through an investment into that particular aspect, I think it's better for sustainability.
So what type of investment are we talking about? Because we talk about natural endowment. Uganda's case, for example, I just now don't know what a forest cover looks like, but we are naturally endowed with these forests, the protected areas, as we're talking about them. What kind of investment are we talking about, and what is that clarion call now to us as a country and as a people?
Thank you very much, moderator. I must say that maybe let me start from why we're talking about investing, why we're talking about this very unique and interesting project that we have developed. The Investing in Forests and Protected Areas for Climate Smart Development project is a project that we started developing way back in 2017. And it's funded by the World Bank to a tune of up to $148.2 million. And the government of Uganda will invest in $30 million. Now, where is this project happening? It's a project that is in the Albertine region, where it is focusing largely on the central forest reserves there, and the national parks and some game reserves, wildlife reserves. And it's also in part of the north, in Namuru and Lamo. In Lamo particularly because of the refugees there. And then the other area where we are going is the West Nile region of the country. And in there we have we have about 11 districts there under the refugees. So in total, we have 18 districts that we are focusing on. And then we have 4 wildlife reserves and 7 national parks and 27 central forest reserves, to which this project is going to invest in. And it's a huge amount of financing. $178.2 million in total is a huge investment. Now, in terms of investment, let me start with the national parks and game reserves. We're improving and also developing new visitor centers. We are also working on our visitor gates. This is a Uganda, tourism sector brings in quite a good amount of resources. So an improvement to it through investment, we believe will bring in some resources in terms of revenue and foreign exchange. And of course, that's part of the benefits that will even accrue and will even go down to the communities. We also have some restoration investments for some of the protected areas like Central Forest Reserves. We have, in the refugees, we want to restore some of the degraded the host communities of these refugees in those districts that we have talked about. We have, we are going also to improve on protection in terms of enforcement of these protected areas, looking out for any criminal acts and checking them through having drones for surveillance purposes, for example. We have procured some drones under this project. We have improvement of outposts for rangers, both in the national parks and game reserves, and also for forest guards in the Central Forest Reserves. So it's a huge amount of investment that we're doing in there. But we also have one intervention in that project, which is at a national scale, commercial plantation subsidy, where we are going to give a subsidy to some people who are interested in investing or establishing plantations in some parts of the country. That's nationwide.
How long is this project, for example?
It's a 6-year project.
It's a 6-year project.
Yes.
Okay, and the $1 million that we talk about here, is this a loan from somewhere?
Yes, part of that money is a loan, $78 million US. $78.2 million is a loan, while $70 million US is a grant. So that's how unique this project is. It's not entirely a loan.
Okay.
So we have a grant as well.
It's not a new phenomenon in Uganda to get these funding and these loans or grants, whatever it is, to benefit the lives of Ugandans, etc. There was one that we got, I think, through the Ministry of Agriculture from IFAD. It was a 20-year loan to do and to develop for us the vegetable oils. You remember that? And it was a 20-year project. 20 years later, we still had to have these issues. One is to be done to ensure that, yes, we have this grant, we have this loan, that we utilize it to get there, and actually after 6 years see that the project that we started out to do has actually happened, and it is here, and these are the results that we show to the people.
True. Let me give you an example. I mean, if we do invest in tourism, for example, we expect to have a return. We expect to have more visitors come because of the investments we're going to do in those national parks and wildlife reserves. So it is very clear, therefore, that the money that will come in will be able to pay back this loan over time. Of course, not after 6 years only. The impact goes beyond six years. For us to see better results from this investment, it's more than 6 years. It could be about 20 or so years. And with that kind of investment, we're able to pay back. Even the plantation subsidy, commercial forestry, if we do it well, the way we believe we shall, we are able to get monies out of that from the sale of those products later. And that money somehow will trickle back into the national coffers in very many ways. And so we believe that that should be able to pay back this loan over the period. So it is very clear. And we also know we did a computation, a very quick computation, that we shall contribute to 1.09% to the GDP of this country. 1.09% to the gross domestic product of this country with this investment. Such a huge contribution just from a project which is on a focus in those areas.
Well, that's a good one. Yeah. Mr. Kazungu, how in the first place did we get where we are?
We've been having what called the reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation for a very long time. From 2009, this is the linkage between forest and climate change. So that is a global program that Uganda is party to, like many other countries in the world. And through that program of REDD+, they normally call it REDD+, in short, we were able to identify drivers for deforestation and forest degradation. And it's from those drivers that we coined the project to deal with those drivers. But also sometime in 2018, we developed what we call a forest investment program document for the country, which is also part of the work that we've been doing under REDD+. So it is from those two, the REDD+ assessments of the drivers for deforestation and forest degradation and the forest investment program, that we picked out areas of intervention that, from which we coined 3 components of this project.
Okay, very important. Now, we remember in 2015, the Bamugemerere UNRA probe revealed many of these things that, for example, the giveaway of central reserves. You talk about the forest reserves that we have, the central reserves that we have, and of course, many of these. We were the same people who actually came in to invest in these central reserves. We gave out forest reserves. We did all the things to ourselves because we wanted some other investment. And then we dealt with them, and it is where we are. How sure are we that going forward in the future we'll be able still to guard against the giveaway of some of these areas, the protected areas, the forests, the central reserves, etc.?
Well, I think for me, the issue of forests and what you're calling giveaway is a conversation which is, still ongoing. We have mechanisms in place to make sure these forests really appreciated by the communities that are around them. And the more these forests are seen to have value, then it will be difficult for somebody to really, change the land use, for that forest because they are beneficial. And that's why increase in protection of these forests and conservation of these forests, and also making sure that the entire public understands the value of this forest, to me, is the one step forward that we're doing with this project as well. So it's, but we still have conversations, of course. We've, that we've always said no. I mean, this forest can provide the many other benefits beyond the what somebody would want to think is a short-term benefit. So we have been able to do that, as a forestry sector. So
okay.
I believe very much that we are in control, I must say.
We talk about this big investment in protecting our forests and the reserves and investing in them. And you just highlighted a few areas in the Albertine and, of course, in northern Uganda where you're doing these things. Do the people in these areas know what you're doing? Are you in talks with them? Are you in consultations with them? Are you engaging them? Because government does very many projects that at times have nothing to do with the people in those areas where they are people part of this whole investment.
True. We've been engaging the communities around the national parks, the wildlife reserves, because they are very key in the sustenance of those investments in those parks. And they're also direct beneficiaries. We have been engaging communities around the central forest reserves that are part of what called collaborative forest management engagements. And those groups are very important for the conservation of those central forest reserves. The local governments have been engaged already, sometime last year in April. We engaged local governments. Maybe I didn't tell you. While we are launching this project, on the 9th, which is this Wednesday, just after the Women's Day tomorrow, the project itself became effective last year in August, effective from the requirements of the World Bank, which is financing it. So we became effective in August last year, but the government of Uganda included it in its financing in July 2020. So since July 2020, we've been doing some activities to set the path as we wait for the effectiveness of the bank, and then we start the actual implementation. So we've been engaging. Local governments are aware. The local councils and those local governments are aware about this project. We are also, after the launch on the 9th, we're also going to engage them more. We're going back to those communities just to inform them that now we are here. We are ready to, to start implementation. Because there are those things that you do before you do the actual implementation. Like make sure you do the procurements of the staffing, for example, to support the ministry staff that are going to be involved in this project. And then also procurement of equipment and other things that we need. So all that is ongoing now. So with that, we should be able now to engage the communities even better. When do
you hope to commence the investment itself?
The investments, some of them have already started, but the official launch of the project is this Wednesday, on the 9th of March.
Okay, so what will happen at the launch?
At the launch, we shall do more of sensitization. I mean, that's the core objective of a launch. Increase the profile of this project among the key. In fact, the event will be graced by Her Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda. We're in contact with the office. So we expect that, and the other dignitaries, of course, will be there, from Minister of Finance, from Minister of Tourism, Wildlife and Aquatics. They're part of the core steering persons of this project, the Uganda Wildlife Authority, the NFA, civil society organizations, because they are extremely important when you look at the social safeguards issues and the environmental safeguards issues and advocacy, the number of these community investments that we have. So on that day, we shall be informing the public officially that here we are with this project, and please, we need to move together for its success.
Okay, so what are the activities embedded in the investment in forest and protected areas? What are these particular things that the hands-on that we're going to do in the investment itself? We talk about human resource, we talk about recruiting and doing all the things, machinery, etc. What are the activities specifically embedded in this investment?
Well, we have three components for this investment. The first component is dealing with protection and conservation of the national parks, wildlife reserves, and the Center Forest Reserves. And in there, we have a number of activities.
In the protection?
Yeah, in the protection. For example, the outposts that we are going to construct are going to enable us even recruit more staff, have more staff be comfortable while working in those protected areas, in those estates. And then we also have, of course, some restoration interventions in the Center Forest Reserves. Part of restoration. Restoration means that you are replacing what has been lost, because these are natural forests anyway, in those Center Forest Reserves. So we are replacing what could have been lost due to windfalls, due to some bit of encroachment. We have a bit of encroachment in some of these places. There's no doubt about that. So we're trying to restore what has been lost with some of those places. But of course, also the tourism investments as part of protection are also there. For example, when you do the gates, invest in those gates, for example, improve the visitor centers, those outposts and everything. And also infrastructure. We have some roads that we are going to open up in those places. They help with the protection activities and enforcement activities as well. The component 2 is on productive forestry. Productive forestry is where we shall have the subsidy, the plantation subsidy, for example. We shall have some restoration activities in some other areas outside the protected areas. The third component is the one focusing on the refugees, for example. And the refugees here, we are focusing on those host communities, trying to see how can we enable them have more wood, because what we have seen actually, which we're in agreement with the partners who are working with the refugees, is that there's been some substantial loss of trees, of tree cover in some of those areas. Satellite imagery is good evidence. In some of those areas where the refugees have been for some time, and it's very difficult, of course, to control that. But we're saying, okay, fine. Now those communities now need to have these estates back, this wood back in the communities, so that they don't move further distances now to look for them. But also, we have some specific, delivery of fuel wood, which is very interesting, of fuel wood to the refugee settlements through this project. Then we also have agroforestry, which we are going to invest in those host communities. Agroforestry is mixed farming kind of. We have trees and crops, and the other forms of agroforestry that you can talk about that we intend to deliver in those host communities. And then, of course, the fourth component is the coordination one, and the monitoring, making sure that everything is going on very well.
Okay, and what's the maturity period of time that we need to get to for much of this? Because I think when you talk about restoration, for example, the productive forestry, does it have a maturity period?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, agroforestry species take a shorter time, of course. If we have a woodlot, for example, of eucalypts maybe on the boundaries or specifically planted for wood fuel sourcing, I mean, that takes a bit of a shorter time. Between 3, 5, 6 years, you can have some wood for fuel wood. Anyway, construction timber from eucalyptus also takes a short time, depending on the species, maybe about 5 years or 6 years, for, this fencing post, for example, maybe 10 years for 10 to 12 years for, depending on the species, for real construction purposes, like timber, for example. But for pines, if they're there, and other species which take a longer time, like 18 to 24 years or so, those ones we know that it will come later. But of course, there are other benefits that accrue from their being planted or being grown there, like the ecosystem services that we have, the carbon sequestration kind of things that come out of that, and then also some wood that can come out for furniture, for example, during the silvicultural engagements. Silviculture means that you're doing the pruning, you're doing the thinning, you're removing some trees as others grow, that is thinning, you're removing the branches. Some of those can be used for other purposes, quick benefits from them. So it depends on what species that you have.
Okay.
Each tree has its own rotation period.
Okay. One of the challenges that we've had with our forests and what we talk about here is the nature of the lives that people live. We still get into firewood, we still cut, deforestate to get charcoal, get all the things. Are we finding a solution to this? Because I think it's also something that is continuing. We'll do this, but until we solve this other problem of fuel, firewood, etc., we shan't get anywhere. Are we solving that problem? Because we can't do this, but yet again, wherever we are losing the forest cover because of the way we live. And that's the best thing that we are actually doing currently. Are we finding a solution to that problem?
Yes, indeed. You could have heard about the 40 million tree campaign.
40 million tree campaign.
40 million tree campaign.
Is that for your ministry?
It's for our Ministry of Water and Environment. What we call the Roots campaign, run out of trees campaign. Roots as in ROOTS. Following the
40 million. Why 40 million?
40 million because we targeted our population of the country at the time, and looking at every person at least
planting a tree
on a day. Initially, that was our initial thought. Because of COVID-19, started about 2020, that kind of conversation. Because of COVID-19, we couldn't gather people and mobilize them to do that, so we decided to go for season-based. We're saying, okay, in a season, can we plant 40 million trees in a season or two, or in the whole year, for example? So that's the kind of approach that we're using now under the Roots campaign. And we mobilized the private sector people to come on board, several Uganda breweries and the banks, and they've joined us for that campaign. So that's one way. And we are focusing a lot on indigenous trees, which are mainly the largest source of our charcoal, as you know. The good charcoal is from indigenous trees. The combretums, those kind of acacias, those kind of trees, which are mainly in the rangeland areas. So we are focusing on indigenous trees for the Roots campaign. But of course, you can rule out the eucalypts coming in, because sometimes you might go to a community and that species does very well. But our main focus is on indigenous trees. That's one way. The other way is that we are promoting fuelwood plantations, for example. We have some investments that we have already within the ministry, and even by other partners that we support, that are focusing on investing in plantations specifically for fuelwood, so that we can try to save our indigenous trees that are really getting wiped out because of the dire demand for charcoal. Then, of course, working with the Ministry of Energy, there are so many other programs, plus other civil society organizations, other programs that we have to use less wood for every cooking, using technologies that are wood saving. And this is also building up. It's in the past has been very slow, but now it is building up, quite a bit. You see many improved cook stoves, institutional and the household level, improved cook stoves all over the market now, even in supermarkets now. We have quite a number of those. So that put together is something that we are trying to work on, as not only the Ministry of Water and Environment, beyond Ministry of Water and Environment, because we work in partnership with many other persons, stakeholders, to be able to make sure this happens, in addition to our protection and conservation of our natural forests that we have. And of course, also improving on the regulation. We have guidelines for securing charcoal in this country that we prepared. Very soon they'll be coming out for officially, which look at what exactly should we do to save this charcoal. How can we do charcoal burning in a way that will save more wood? Of course, if we can also have the other alternatives come very quickly, then I must say that will be the best thing that we could have. If they could come in as quickly as we wish they should, then we shall slowly shift, that energy shift from wood-based to maybe something else.
What plans do you have for the residents or the people who are already living in these protected areas? Because I know we have people living in these protected areas, in the central reserves, in game parks, etc. What plans do you have with those, or for those who are already there, they've encroached, and that's where they are in making a life? How are you getting them on board in this particular investment?
Interesting question. Are you talking about the indigenous communities, for example?
There are
The
those
Batwa, for example?
There are those, the Batwa, the Basongola, and the others, but those also have moved because of pressures everywhere and stuff like that. What do you have for all of them, the indigenous and those who have just encroached?
Interesting question indeed. Let me start with the indigenous. We have an indigenous planning framework for them under this project. And that in that framework it details all the things that you can do to get a win-win. I mean, to have them, because they've been there anyway.
They've been there, that's what it is.
So you can work with them in a manner that will enable them not to, to damage that forest because they need it anyway. We have that planning framework in place. But for those who have settled in through encroachment, we are, trying to move them out in that manner, which will is agreeable, acceptable with other stakeholders, slowly, of course, providing them with the alternatives because they have where they come
compensations. From. Ugandans would demand for compensations, and compensations are even more expensive than the project itself.
Well, I mean, I think the truth is that compensate you for what? What have we done? I mean, you're the one who has come upon this forest, which is a protected forest anyway. In other words, you're there illegally. So the issue of compensation is a conversation for maybe another day, because yes, because I don't think that because anybody could walk in and expect a compensation. So I think we need to be.
They walked on trailer land.
We need to be very careful.
They walked on trailer land and they're actually demanding for compensation.
So we don't want to set a precedent, in other words. So it depends on how it comes. Because otherwise we would be hoodwinked into thinking that these are, just encroaches, yet there are people targeting a certain compensation, which is maybe out there. And I don't think that's a very good idea. So I think it is something that we need to discuss with all the other parties that are relevant in that conversation.
Who are those others? The relevant parties, the multi-sectoral planners. Who are
the local governments, for example, who are there. I mean, the cultural leaders, for example, in those communities, the traditional and cultural leaders. I mean, because these people are, they're part of some cultures somewhere, and some of them are from within that same community and getting in. Others are coming from as far as somewhere else into a Central Forest Reserve in Mityana, for example, or Mubende. So we need to study. We need to study all this. Who are these persons? How did they come here? What is the issue? Can we move them quickly? Or can we move them out slowly? The compensation issue for us is not really something we go for first. That comes probably as a last resort if maybe there was an issue with that land ownership and whatever, which usually is not the case because these places have boundary plans. They have been they are gazetted areas. 98 statutory instruments are there. So if you're in, you're in illegally.
Which other government parastatals or which other government MDAs are implementing this project for you?
The Minister of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities are, part of the steering, they co-chair our steering committee. The Uganda Wildlife Authority is focusing on the wildlife reserves and the national parks, while the National Forest Authority is focusing on Central Forest Reserves. And of course, the local governments in those 18 local governments is also. They're also
they're on board.
So the steering committee, which is the the main policy and decision-making arm of this project, is composed of many institutions. About 12 of them. 11 to 12 institutions. Including academia, civil society organizations. We have means of local governments, of gender. The OPM, of course, is part of the steering committee. It is extremely responsible for the refugee issues in this country. So we are working with them to be able to to make sure this works in the refugees.
Hold you there. Mr. Kazungu Bob, the Principal Forest Officer from the Ministry of Works and Ministry of Water and Environment. Thank you so much. We just hold it here, take a break, and return after a short break.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Voices. I feel happy when my mother spends time with me. I hope all mothers will like my mother. I want my mother to reach out to all mothers. She knows how important it is to be a good mother. I promise to help my mother inspire other mothers to change.
In this time of COVID, what is your promise to the children of Uganda? Because a violence-free childhood is everyone's right. Raising Voices.
Are your children ready to learn? Schools are open. As parents and guardians, It is your duty to ensure that your children go back to school. COVID-19 prevention measures have been put in place to keep students safe as they go back to school. Not only do teachers prioritize everyone's health, including their own, but they discourage violence among students. They also ensure that students follow SOPs. Any concerns are reported to a school administrator or senior woman or man teacher for correction and further guidance. Dear parents and guardians, you too must play your role. Ensure your children always maintain a 2-meter distance from others, avoid crowded places, regularly wash their hands with soap and water, and wear a washed and clean face mask that covers their mouths and noses. Please keep your children at home if they're feeling sick, and take note. In our effort to keep students safe, there are no visitation days or any other school visits allowed. Let's share knowledge, not COVID-19. This message is supported by the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education and Sports, and UNICEF. Stay safe.
Double MBs. For the same price on daily bundles with Airtel, now you get double MBs for twice your enjoyment. For 250 shillings, you now get double. That's 30 MBs. For only 500 shillings, you get 80 MBs. And for 1,000 Uganda shillings, enjoy 180 MBs. All valid for 24 hours. Dial *175# or use the My Airtel app to enjoy double MBs on your daily bundles for the exact same price with Airtel, the smartphone network.
National Medical Stores is a government agency mandated to buy, store and distribute medicines and medical supplies to government health facilities in Uganda. For Ugandans that we serve, help us serve you better by taking your individual responsibilities seriously. Report theft of government medicines and medical supplies to the nearest police station or to the State House Health Monitoring Unit. Do not pay for any medicines or medical supplies labeled Government of Uganda, not for sale. Do all that is within your means to stop all preventable diseases, including COVID-19. Continue observing the Ministry of Health Standard Operating Procedures, SOPs, including wearing a face mask whenever you are in public spaces. Visit a designated health facility to receive your COVID-19 vaccination and a booster dose for those that are eligible. Prevention is better than cure. National Medical Stores, passionate about your life.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Well, thank you so much and welcome back from the break. My name is Jagenda Semakola Ziksok on UBC TV. Good Morning Uganda Extra here right today. And of course with me in studios is Mr. Bob Kazungu. He's a Principal Forest Officer from the Ministry of Water and Environment. And we just talked about forests and protected areas, the investment that we talk about, a $148.2 million US project that is supposed to be launched the day after tomorrow by Her Excellency, the Vice President of Uganda, Major Retired Jessica Lupo, and of course see it get to where it's supposed to get. Now, Mr. Kazungu is with me here. We're expecting to have Mr. Tom Okello, the ED for National Forest Authority in studios, and we yet can't see him. And Mr. Mwanda, the ED of UA, was also supposed to join us here. But nonetheless, Mr. Kazungu is actually with us here, and fortunately, he is representing the implementing ministry, which is the Ministry of Water and Environment. And of course, here is where we are. You talked about quite a number of things which are very exciting, and you talked about the Roots campaign. How far is the Roots campaign? How much have we covered with that? And what happens, because now the Roots campaign is not only for Albertine region, it's not only for Northern Uganda. Roots campaign, I think, is for all of us. What needs to be done, and how would we rally and marshal people to get into that campaign?
We have engagements, of course, with a number of partners. The Uganda breweries and the Stanbic Bank and others have come on board. Many others have come on board. And there are many promos that we have done on different media houses for that campaign. And we have also, of course, sent out this communication to local governments. And so every season we take note of what has been planted and that campaign. So it is taking care of many of the tree planting and growing activities that are ongoing in the country. We want to capture all all that information, and then we make a record of that and see how far. So because of the COVID-19, we've had a bit of challenges, but now that the economy has been fully open, we expect to have and share good information. We're capturing all that has been planted for the last 2 seasons, and then should be able to share with everybody, with the public. So, but in terms of preparations, we already prepared. We have the logistics that we need now. We have the people ready. We have the private sector that is just continuing to support tree planting in different parts of the country under that campaign. It's just a matter of now us compiling this information. We have a team, Tree Adoption, and others who are also coming on board. Tree Adoption Uganda, it's an NGO which is capturing all that information, and we expect to have a report, which I think we shall do at the media center, and maybe even UBC TV very soon, how far we have gone.
Uganda's very good programs are normally delayed by benchmarks and work in progress and all the things. And I'm only thinking we delayed or normally tarry because of certain things that we want to put in place. We talk about compensations, you refuted that. We talk about benchmarks, we talk about, we normally tend to not say we're starting the project here, complete it here, and we tarry a lot. I don't know whether you do not have these hiccups on the way that you want to get somewhere, do the launch of the program, then again get stuck. We just talked about the parish development model that the president launched this month at Chibuku Primary School in Chibuku District. The conversation now with the different stakeholders, politicians, different leaders at different levels are saying, why did we even get into launching the project before we understand the project? Now we might launch this also, then again get delayed to understanding it. Are we there that once we do the launch, are we sure we are actually where we are, that we should now just move and see things working out?
Indeed, we are there. I mean, this is why we, as I mentioned, we started in financial year 2021, July. And so we've been doing the preparations. We became effective in August 2021, just last year. And that time we have taken, we've been preparing ourselves. So by the time we launch, and we are, of course, basing on the lessons and experiences from other programs and projects. You launch when you're ready. So we are now launching because we are ready to go.
What are some of the project outcomes that we expect?
Of course, we believe that, one of the longer term, which is an impact, the GDP contribution, the 1.09% to the GDP of this country. But we know that these project investments will translate into increased job creation, for example. Many people are going to be employed. Revenues are going to increase, especially from tourism, but also from these investments in forestry. And so livelihoods of the people, as an outcome, are going to be enhanced. We have indicators to check that. So we believe that is going to happen. And of course, better management of estates, we believe so. And above it all, it's a climate smart development project. The issue of ensuring that we deal